The Zephyrian cruiser, Crimson Talon, drifted silently through the asteroid field near the outer rim of the Kepler system. Commander Vexhai studied the tactical display with satisfaction, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console. After 3 standard cycles of hunting, they had finally cornered their prey. "Target vessel has sustained critical damage to their primary engines," reported Lieutenant Kral from the sensor station. "Hull breaches detected across multiple sections. They're venting atmosphere." Vexhai's predatory smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. The humans had proven surprisingly resilient during their brief but violent expansion into what the Galactic Confederation considered civilized space. Their primitive ships shouldn't have lasted this long against superior Zephyrian technology, yet somehow this single human vessel had managed to evade his hunting pack for weeks. "Any response to our surrender demands?" Vexhai asked. "Negative, Commander. The vessel appears to be running on emergency power only." The human ship was small by galactic standards, barely 100 meters in length. Its hull bore the scars of countless battles, patched and repatched with whatever materials the humans could scavenge. Yet despite its battered appearance, something about the vessel made Vexhai uneasy. The humans called it the Shadow Runner, and it had been a persistent thorn in Confederation shipping lanes for months. "Boarding pods ready, Commander," announced Tactical Officer Thane. "Shall we take the vessel?" Vexhai hesitated. Standard protocol dictated that ships refusing surrender should be destroyed immediately. But the Confederation High Command had been very specific in their orders regarding human captives. The species was still largely unknown, their capabilities poorly understood despite several skirmishes along the frontier. Live specimens would be invaluable for intelligence gathering. "Launch boarding pods. I want that ship taken intact and any survivors brought aboard for questioning." 3 sleek boarding pods detached from the Crimson Talon and accelerated toward their target. Each pod contained a full squad of Zephyrian Marines, their powered armor gleaming under the asteroid field's dim light. The pods struck the human vessel's hull with precise impacts, their molecular cutters carving through the damaged armor plating like it was paper. Marine Captain Joule led the assault through the first breach point. His squad moved with practiced efficiency through the cramped human corridors, their weapons sweeping for any sign of resistance. The ship's interior was strange by Confederation standards, built for creatures much smaller than the typical galactic species. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across walls lined with what appeared to be primitive electronic systems. "Movement detected Section 7, reported Sergeant Kess over the comm. "Single heat signature, appears to be hiding in what might be an engine maintenance shaft." "Converge on that position," Joule ordered. "Remember, we want prisoners." The Marines found their quarry exactly where the sensors indicated. A single human male, dressed in what appeared to be some sort of military uniform, crouched behind a damaged power conduit. He was smaller than expected. Perhaps 6 feet in height, with short brown hair and intense blue eyes. What caught Joule's attention immediately was the complete absence of fear in the human's expression. "Drop your weapons and surrender," Joule commanded through his suit's translator. "Resistance is futile." The human slowly raised his hands, but his gaze never wavered. There was something predatory in those eyes, something that reminded Joule uncomfortably of a hunting vrock from his homeworld. The human spoke, his voice calm and steady despite his circumstances. "Lieutenant Commander Marcus Kane, Earth Naval Special Warfare Command, serial number 7749 Alpha Tango 6. Joule frowned within his helmet. The translation matrix was struggling with some of the terms. Naval Special Warfare came through clearly enough, but other phrases seemed to lack proper galactic equivalents. "You are now a prisoner of the Zephyrian Empire," Joule announced. "You will be transferred to our vessel for questioning." The human simply nodded, offering no resistance as the Marines secured him with energy restraints. As they escorted him through the ship's corridors toward the boarding pods, Joule couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Most species showed some sign of distress when captured, some indication of their defeat. But this human walked among his captors as if he were simply taking a stroll. Back aboard the Crimson Talon, Commander Vex High examined the prisoner through the force field of a detention cell. The human sat perfectly still on the simple bench, his posture relaxed, yet somehow alert. Vex High had interrogated dozens of different species during his career, and he prided himself on reading body language and psychological states. But this creature was an enigma. "I am Commander Vex High of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy," he announced through the cell's comm system. "You are charged with piracy, unlawful transit through Confederation space, and destruction of civilian shipping." The human looked up, meeting Vex High's gaze directly. "Marcus Kane, that's all you're getting. I think you misunderstand your situation, human. You are alone, millions of light years from your primitive homeworld. Your ship is destroyed, your crew presumably dead. You have nothing to bargain with." A slight smile played across the human's features. "You'd be surprised what I have to bargain with, Commander." Something in the way the human said it made Vex High's scales itch with unease. He activated the enhanced interrogation protocols, flooding the cell with psychotropic gases designed to lower inhibitions and induce compliance. Most species became significantly more cooperative within minutes of exposure. The human simply closed his eyes and controlled his breathing, showing no visible effects whatsoever. "Interesting," Vex High murmured. "Your species appears to have some natural resistance to our standard interrogation methods." "Among other things," Kane replied without opening his eyes. Over the following hours, Vex High tried every technique in the Confederation's interrogation manual: neural disruption fields, sonic bombardment, gravitational stress, even direct psychic probes by the ship's mentalist core specialists. Each attempt either failed completely or produced only minimal discomfort for the prisoner. "Sir," reported Chief Interrogator Meltan after the latest failed session, "I've never encountered anything like this. The subject's mental defenses are unlike anything in our databases. It's as if his mind has been specifically trained to resist external manipulation." Vex High studied the security footage of their prisoner. Kane had spent the last 6 hours in meditation, apparently completely unaffected by procedures that would have broken most beings within minutes. "Perhaps we need to try a different approach," Vex High mused. "Send a message to Confederation Command. Inform them we have captured a human specimen with unusual resistance to interrogation. Request guidance." The response came back within hours, and it was not what Vex High had expected. Instead of the usual bureaucratic acknowledgement, the message bore the personal seal of Admiral Koreth, one of the most senior officers in the entire Confederation fleet. "Priority Alpha Transmission. Confederation High Command. Commander Vex High, your capture of a human specimen is of immediate strategic importance. You are ordered to proceed directly to Nexus Station for debriefing and prisoner transfer. Under no circumstances are you to allow the prisoner to communicate with outside parties or access ship systems. Maximum security protocols are now in effect. Admiral Koreth sends his personal commendations for this capture. The strategic value of human intelligence cannot be overstated at this time." Vex High read the message twice, his confusion growing with each line. Why would a single human prisoner warrant such high-level attention? And why the emphasis on security protocols? The human was unarmed, alone, and completely contained within their detention systems. As if summoned by his thoughts, an alert chimed from the detention level. Security Chief Grack's voice came over the comm, tight with barely controlled alarm. "Commander, you need to see this. The prisoner has made a request." "What kind of request?" "He's asking to send a single message. Says it's just to let someone know he's alive." Vex High's scales rippled with unease. "Absolutely not. Our orders are specific about communication restrictions." "Sir, that's not the concerning part." It's what he said when we refused. Which was, he said to tell you that preventing him from making this particular call would be the biggest mistake the Confederation has ever made. And Commander, the way he said it. I've been doing this job for 15 cycles, and I've never heard anyone sound so certain about anything. Vex-High made his way down to the detention level, his mind racing. Through the force field, he could see Kane sitting exactly as before, but there was something different about his posture now. A subtle tension that hadn't been there before. You wanted to see me, prisoner? Kane looked up, and for the first time since his capture, Vex-High saw something other than calm acceptance in those blue eyes. There was a hardness there now, something cold and calculating. I need to send a message, Kane said simply. One transmission, no encryption, no coded language, just a simple notification that I'm alive and in custody. That's not going to happen. You're a prisoner of war. You have no rights to outside communication. Kane stood slowly, his movements fluid and controlled. Commander, I'm going to explain something to you, and I really hope you listen carefully. My name is Marcus Kane. I'm not just any soldier. I'm a Navy SEAL, which means I'm part of Earth's most elite special operations force. But that's not what should concern you. He paused, letting the words sink in. What should concern you is that I'm not just any SEAL. I'm part of a very specific unit, with a very specific mission profile, and the people who trained me, the people who sent me out here, they have a very specific protocol for when operators like me go missing. Vex-High felt his throat go dry. What kind of protocol? The kind where they send someone to find me. And Commander, the someone they'll send is why I need to make that call. Because if I don't check in soon, if they don't hear from me, they're going to assume the worst. And when they assume the worst, they send him. Him? Kane's expression was completely serious now, all traces of his earlier calm gone. They call him Reaper. And trust me, Commander, you really don't want to meet him. The way Kane said the name made Vex-High's blood run cold. There was something in the human's voice, a mixture of respect and genuine fear that spoke of experience with whatever this Reaper represented. You're trying to intimidate me with stories of some mythical rescuer? No myth, Commander. Very real, very dangerous, and very, very good at his job. Vex-High studied the prisoner carefully. Every instinct he'd developed over years of command was screaming that this was no bluff. The human's certainty was absolute, his conviction unshakable. Even if this individual exists, how would he find you? We're in the middle of nowhere, heading to a secure facility. No rescue is possible. Kane's smile returned, but now it held no warmth whatsoever. You really don't understand what you've gotten yourself into, do you? Let me put it this way, Commander. In my culture, we have an old saying, you can run, but you can't hide. When it comes to Reaper, that's not just a saying, it's a promise. As if summoned by Kane's words, alarms began wailing throughout the ship. Vex-High spun toward the nearest comm panel as his bridge crew's panicked voices filled the air. Commander, to the bridge immediately! Unknown contacts approaching at impossible velocities! Sir, they just appeared out of nowhere! Vex-High looked back at Kane, who was now sitting calmly on his bench again, that slight smile playing across his features. I tried to warn you, Commander. You should have let me make that call. The ship shuddered as weapons fire began impacting their shields, and through the detention cell's small viewport, Vex-High could see flashes of energy lighting up the darkness of space. Whatever was attacking them was doing so with a precision and ferocity that spoke of professional military training. How many ships? Vex-High demanded into his comm. That's the problem, sir. Sensors are reading only one vessel, but the attack pattern suggests a full squadron. We're taking damage across all shield sectors simultaneously. Kane leaned back against the cell wall, his expression almost peaceful. One ship is all he needs, Commander. One ship and about 30 seconds to realize you have something that belongs to him. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, and the lights flickered. Emergency klaxons joined the general alarm, and Vex High could hear his crew shouting orders and damage reports over the comm system. "Sir, the attacking vessel is requesting communication," came the voice from the bridge. Vex High looked at Kane one more time, seeing nothing but certainty in those blue eyes. Against every instinct screaming at him to refuse, he found himself nodding. "Put it through to this location." The detention cell's communication system crackled to life, and a voice emerged from the speakers. It was human, unmistakably, but there was something in its tone that made even Vex High's experienced nerves fray. It was cold, professional, and absolutely implacable. "This is Reaper. You have something of mine." The silence that followed the transmission stretched for several heartbeats before Commander Vex High found his voice. Through the viewport, he could see a sleek black vessel maintaining perfect formation with his ship, its weapons trained on critical systems with surgical precision. "This is Commander Vex High of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy," he responded, fighting to keep his voice steady. "You are attacking a sovereign military vessel. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." A sound came through the speakers that it took Vex High a moment to recognize as laughter. It was completely devoid of humor. "Commander, let me explain your situation. Your shields are down to 37%. I have targeting locks on your main reactor, life support systems, and weapon batteries. Your engines are operating at reduced capacity due to damage I've already inflicted to your power distribution network. You have approximately 4 minutes before structural integrity failures begin cascading through your hull." The precision of the assessment sent chills down Vex High's spine. His own tactical officers hadn't been able to provide damage reports that accurate. "What do you want?" Vex High asked, already knowing the answer. "Lieutenant Commander Marcus Kane. Alive and unharmed. You have 60 seconds to begin transport procedures." From his cell, Kane spoke up. "I told you to let me make that call, Commander." Vex High spun toward the prisoner. "You planned this. This whole capture was a setup." Kane shook his head. "No setup. I really was trying to complete my mission when your people found me. But I also knew that if things went sideways, eventually Reaper would come looking." "How could he possibly have found us this quickly? We've been traveling for days." "Commander," came Reaper's voice over the comm, apparently having overheard the conversation. "May I suggest you stop asking questions you don't want the answers to and start focusing on the ones that might keep your crew alive?" Vex High's tactical display showed his ship's condition deteriorating rapidly. Somehow, without using any weapons he could detect, the attacking vessel was systematically dismantling his ship's critical systems. "Bridge to Commander," came Captain Jules' voice over the internal comm. "Sir, we're detecting some kind of molecular disruptor beam. It's targeting specific components with impossible accuracy. Engineering reports that systems are simply stopping. Not destroyed, just deactivated." 30 seconds, Commander," Reaper announced calmly. Vex High looked at Kane, seeing something like pity in the human's expression. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, do you?" Kane said quietly. "Reaper isn't just a soldier, Commander. He's what happens when you take someone who was already the best and then give him resources that your civilization can't even comprehend." "What resources? What technology could possibly—" 15 seconds. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light, but the message was clear. The attacking vessel could shut down their systems at will. "Commander," Kane said gently, "just let him dock. Trust me. This ends much better for everyone if you cooperate." Against every instinct, every regulation, and every principle he'd learned in 20 years of military service, Vex High found himself activating the ship's internal comm. "All stations, stand down. Prepare for diplomatic boarding." The docking procedure that followed was unlike anything in Vex High's experience. The attacking vessel attached itself to their hull with mechanical precision, creating a perfect seal without any of the standard negotiation protocols. Somehow, it had interfaced directly with their airlocks and overridden the security systems. "Sir," reported his security chief, "the boarding tunnel is pressurizing. Single life sign approaching." "Full Marine squad to the primary airlock," Vex-High ordered. "Commander," Kane called out, "I really wouldn't do that. My ship, my decisions." Kane sighed. "Your funeral." The airlock cycled, and Vex-High watched through security cameras as his Marines took position. 12 of his best soldiers, armed with the most advanced weapons the Confederation could provide, trained their rifles on the inner door. The door opened. What stepped through looked human, but Vex-High's experienced eye caught details that marked this individual as something far more dangerous than Kane. The armor was clearly non-standard. Matte black and form-fitting in ways that suggested advanced materials science. The weapon in his hands was unlike anything in the Confederation databases, sleek and purpose-built, with the kind of aesthetic that spoke of a civilization that had moved far beyond mere functionality. But it was the way he moved that truly unsettled Vex-High. Every step was calculated, every gesture economical. This wasn't just training. This was someone who had transcended normal military discipline and achieved something approaching mechanical precision. "Stand down," the figure said calmly to the Marines. "Fire!" shouted Sergeant Kess. 12 military-grade energy rifles discharged simultaneously at point-blank range. The corridor filled with brilliant light as enough destructive force to level a building concentrated on the single target. When the light faded, the figure was still standing. The armor hadn't even been scratched. "I said stand down," Reaper repeated, his voice unchanged. This time, the Marines complied immediately. Vex-High watched in fascination and growing horror as the figure moved through his ship. Every corridor was navigated with perfect knowledge of the layout, despite this being his first time aboard. Every security checkpoint was bypassed with casual efficiency. When blast doors sealed automatically in his path, some kind of tool emerged from his gauntlet and cut through the reinforced metal like it was tissue paper. "How is he doing this?" Vex-High whispered. Kane, who had been monitoring the security feeds along with him, provided the answer. Full-spectrum scanning, real-time tactical analysis, integrated battlefield management systems. His armor is probably running more processing power than your entire ship. That's impossible. No personal armor system could... Commander, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. The figure appeared on the detention-level cameras now, moving with the same relentless efficiency. When he reached Kane's cell, he simply placed one hand on the force field generator. There was a brief flash of light, and the barrier disappeared. "You're late," Kane said, stepping out of the cell. "Traffic," Reaper replied. It was the first hint of anything approaching humor Vex-High had heard from him. "Did you bring my gear?" "In the ship. Medical?" "Nothing serious. They tried some interrogation techniques, but nothing I couldn't handle." "Good, let's go." "Wait," Vex-High called over the comm. "That's it? You're just leaving?" Both humans looked up at the security camera. Kane spoke first. "Commander, you captured a SEAL. That was actually pretty impressive, all things considered. But you made one critical mistake." "Which was?" "You didn't kill me immediately. See, as long as I'm alive, I'm a mission objective. And when Reaper has a mission objective, he doesn't stop until he achieves it. Ever." Reaper nodded toward the camera. "Your ship will be fully operational within the hour. I've left your systems intact, just disabled temporarily. Consider it a professional courtesy." "Why?" Vex-High found himself asking. "Because you treated him well," Reaper replied simply. "No torture, no unnecessary violence. In my experience, that kind of restraint is worth acknowledging." The two humans began moving toward the docking port, but Kane paused and looked back at the camera. "Commander, Can I give you some advice? Vexhai found himself nodding despite knowing they couldn't see it. Yes. When you report this to your superiors, tell them exactly what happened here. Don't embellish, don't downplay it. Tell them that you encountered something they weren't prepared for, and that maybe, just maybe, they should reconsider their approach to humanity. What do you mean? I mean that you've been thinking of us as another primitive species to be conquered or controlled. That's a mistake. We're not like the others you've encountered. Reaper's voice cut in, cold and matter-of-fact. Humans don't surrender. We don't submit, and we don't forgive. The security feeds showed them reaching the docking port. As they prepared to leave, Kane turned back one more time. Oh, and Commander, that message I wanted to send, it wasn't to Earth. It was to warn you what was coming, because Reaper isn't the only one they'll send. He's just the first. The airlock sealed, and within moments, the attacking vessel had detached and disappeared into the void, leaving no trace on any of their sensors. For long minutes, Vexhai stood in the detention level, staring at the empty cell. Then his technical crew began reporting that systems were coming back online, exactly as promised. Within an hour, his ship was fully operational again. But the demonstration of power wasn't lost on him. In that hour, he could have done anything to them. Instead, he had simply taken what he came for and left. The implications were staggering. Vexhai made his way to his private quarters and began composing his report to Admiral Korath. As he wrote, he found himself thinking about Kane's final words. Humans don't surrender, they don't submit, and they don't forgive. What kind of species produced individuals like these? And more importantly, what did it mean for the Confederation's expansion plans? He was still pondering these questions when his communications officer announced an incoming priority transmission from Confederation High Command. Admiral Korath himself appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Commander Vexhai, I trust your prisoner transfer went smoothly? Admiral, there's been a development. The prisoner has been recovered. Korath's expression darkened. Explain. Vexhai gave a complete account of the incident, leaving nothing out. When he finished, the Admiral was silent for a long moment. Commander, what you've described is impossible. A single vessel, operating alone, penetrating our security perimeter, and extracting a prisoner from a military ship without casualties? Yes, sir. The evidence is all in my tactical logs. I want those logs transmitted immediately. And Commander, you're ordered to proceed to Nexus Station as originally planned. We need to debrief you in person. The transmission ended, leaving Vexhai alone with his thoughts. He had the distinct feeling that he had just witnessed something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The question was whether the Confederation would recognize the threat in time to do something about it. 3 days later, as the Crimson Talon approached Nexus Station, Vexhai received another priority transmission. This one bore the seal of the Confederation Council itself. All ships, all stations, priority alert. Effective immediately, any vessel encountering human forces is ordered to withdraw immediately and report contact to High Command. Under no circumstances are Confederation forces to engage human vessels or personnel without direct authorization from the Council. Attached to the message was a classified intelligence report. As Vexhai read through it, his blood grew cold. The report detailed a series of incidents across the galaxy. Confederation outposts going dark, patrol ships disappearing without distress calls, mining facilities found abandoned with no signs of struggle. At first, intelligence had attributed these incidents to various causes: equipment failures, pirate attacks, natural disasters. But then the pattern emerged. Every incident had occurred along the frontier regions where humanity was expanding. Every incident had been preceded by reports of unusual vessel activity in the area, and every incident had left behind the same calling card: facilities and ships intact but completely empty, as if their crews had simply vanished. but it was the final entry that made Vex-High's scales crawl with fear. Most recent incident, Zephyrian mining facility Omega-7. Facility discovered abandoned, all personnel missing. Security logs show single human individual systematically accessing all computer systems before departure. Individual identified through facial recognition as subject designated Reaper from previous intelligence reports. The facility had housed over 3,000 workers. They had all disappeared without a trace. As Vex-High finished reading the report, he realized with growing dread that Kane had been trying to warn him about more than just a rescue operation. The humans weren't just expanding into Confederation space. They were cleaning house. Admiral Koreth stood before the assembled Confederation Council, his usually confident demeanor noticeably strained. The holographic displays around the circular chamber showed a galaxy-wide map dotted with red markers, each one representing a facility, outpost, or ship that had gone dark in the past 6 months. "Honored counselors," he began, "what we're facing is unlike anything in our recorded history. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that challenge our fundamental understanding of what a developing species should be able to achieve." Counselor Zexthon of the Hegemony Worlds leaned forward, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's ambient light. "Admiral, you're asking us to believe that a single individual is responsible for the loss of over 30 installations." "Not just any individual, Counselor. Based on our intelligence, we're dealing with someone the humans call Reaper. And the evidence suggests he's operating with technology decades ahead of our current capabilities." The chamber erupted in skeptical murmurs. Counselor Veltar of the Trade Federation spoke up, her voice sharp with disbelief. "One being, Admiral? One being is crippling our entire frontier operation?" Admiral Koreth activated another display, showing footage from various security systems across the affected installations. "See for yourself, counselors." The first video showed a mining platform on the edge of Hegemony space. The timestamp indicated it was recorded 3 weeks ago. Security cameras tracked a single figure moving through the facility with impossible efficiency. Blast doors that should have required heavy equipment to breach were simply walked through. Security systems that had cost millions of credits were bypassed, as if they didn't exist. "This facility housed 4,000 personnel," Koreth explained. "They all vanished within a 6-hour window." The next video showed a military research station. Again, a single figure, moving with the same mechanical precision. But this time, the cameras captured something that made several counselors gasp audibly. The figure was removing data cores from the facility's central computers. Terabytes of classified research downloaded in minutes. "How is that possible?" demanded Counselor Thren of the Inner Worlds. "Those systems are air-gapped, encrypted with quantum protocols." "We don't know," Koreth admitted. "Our best analysts believe he's using some form of quantum computing interface, but the technology required would be beyond anything we've seen from human civilization." Counselor Prime Vorthak, the eldest member of the council, raised one gnarled hand for silence. "Admiral, what do we know about this individual's background?" Koreth consulted his datapad. "According to intelligence gathered from various sources, Reaper is a designation rather than a name. He's part of an Earth military unit called Navy SEALs, specifically their most elite division. Beyond that, our information becomes fragmentary." "Fragmentary how?" "Every time we think we've identified a source of information about him, that source disappears. Informants, databases, even captured equipment that might contain relevant data. It's as if someone is systematically erasing all traces of his existence from any system we might access." The implications of that statement hung heavy in the chamber. Counselor Zexthon spoke first. "Are you suggesting the humans have infiltrated our intelligence networks?" "I'm suggesting they don't need to. Based on what we've observed, this individual appears capable of accessing any computer system at will. Physical security, encryption, air gaps, none of it matters. A new voice cut through the discussion. Commander Vex-High had been granted permission to address the council, and his first-hand account carried weight that intelligence reports couldn't match. Honored counselors, I've encountered this individual directly. What the Admiral isn't telling you is that he could have killed everyone on my ship. Instead, he chose not to. The question we should be asking isn't how he's doing what he's doing, but why he's showing restraint. Counselor Veltar's tone was dismissive. Restraint? He's eliminated 30 installations. But no casualties, Vex-High pointed out. 30 installations, over 50,000 personnel, and not one confirmed death. Every facility was evacuated before he arrived. Every ship's crew was found safely aboard escape pods. He's not killing people, counselors. He's relocating them. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Counselor Prime Vorthak spoke. Commander, are you suggesting this is some form of prisoner relocation program? I don't know what to call it, Counselor. But I can tell you that the human I captured, Kane, tried to warn me. He said that preventing him from communicating would be the biggest mistake the Confederation has ever made. I think now I understand what he meant. Admiral Koreth activated another display. This brings us to our current crisis, counselors. Yesterday, we lost contact with the entire Gamma Sector frontier. The holographic display zoomed in on a section of space containing dozens of star systems. Every marker was red. 27 systems, over 200 installations, and more than 500,000 personnel, all gone in a single day. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Counselor Thren was the first to recover. Admiral, are you telling us that one individual eliminated 500,000 people in 24 hours? No, Counselor. I'm telling you that one individual relocated 500,000 people in 24 hours. Our long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements from that direction, heading toward the galactic rim. Ships we couldn't identify using propulsion systems we couldn't track. Counselor Prime Vorthak stood slowly, his ancient frame trembling with either age or emotion. Admiral, what you're describing sounds less like military action and more like an evacuation, Koreth finished. Yes, Counselor. That's exactly what it looks like. The silence that followed was broken by an urgent chime from the chamber's communication system. A technician's voice filled the room. Priority alert for the Council. We're receiving a transmission from the Gamma Sector. Origin unknown. Put it through, ordered the Prime Counselor. The holographic displays flickered, replaced by a single figure. He wore the same black armor Commander Vex-High had described, but his helmet was retracted, revealing a human face that could have been anywhere from 30 to 50 years old. His eyes were the pale blue of deep ice, and when he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. Honored members of the Confederation Council, he began. My name is not important, but for your records, you may refer to me as Reaper. The chamber was so quiet that the ambient hum of life support systems seemed loud by comparison. I am transmitting this message to inform you of recent changes in galactic territorial arrangements. Effective immediately, all Confederation presence in what you designate as the Gamma Sector has been relocated to safe zones outside the newly established Human Expansion Zone. A star chart appeared beside his image, showing vast sections of space now marked with different boundaries. All Confederation personnel have been safely relocated to stations within your existing territory. They have been provided with transportation, supplies, and compensation for any personal property that could not be relocated. Medical care has been provided for any injuries sustained during the evacuation process. Counselor Veltar found her voice first. You cannot simply claim sovereign territory belonging to the Confederation. Reaper's expression didn't change. Counselor, I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of this situation. We are not claiming your territory. We are informing you that it is no longer yours. By what authority? By the authority of superior capability, Counselor. The same authority by which the Confederation originally claimed that territory from its previous inhabitants. The brutal honesty of the statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. Counselor Prime Vorthak stepped forward. What do you want from us? Nothing, Prime Counselor. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Humanity is expanding, and we are creating safe zones ahead of that expansion. Your people will not be harmed, but they will be relocated as necessary. And if we refuse? For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed Reaper's features. Prime Counselor, with respect, you're not in a position to refuse. Your military cannot track our ships, your defenses cannot stop our operations, and your intelligence networks cannot predict our movements. This conversation is a courtesy, not a requirement. Admiral Korath stepped forward. What are you? How is one person capable of what you've accomplished? Admiral, I think you're still misunderstanding the scale of what you're dealing with. I am not one person acting alone. I am one person representing the interests of a civilization that you have severely underestimated. The holographic display changed, showing images that made the assembled counselors gasp in shock. Vast shipyards hidden in the dark between stars, manufacturing vessels the size of small moons, fleets that stretched beyond the horizon of any single view screen, industrial complexes that dwarfed anything in Confederation space. While you have been expanding into territories occupied by species with slower-than-light technology, we have been building. While you have been congratulating yourselves on your superiority over primitive civilizations, we have been preparing. Counselor Zexthon's crystalline features had gone pale. How long have you been preparing? Since first contact with the Confederation, Counselor, we learned very quickly what your expansion policies entailed. We decided that humanity would not be added to your collection of subjugated species. The images shifted again, showing something that made Admiral Korath take an involuntary step backward. It was a tactical analysis of Confederation space, complete with fleet positions, defensive capabilities, and resource allocations. The detail was impossible, the accuracy terrifying. We know the location of every ship in your Navy, Admiral. We know the defensive capabilities of every installation. We know the economic capacity of every world. This conversation is happening because we choose to have it, not because you have any ability to force it. Counselor Prime Vorthak found his voice again. What happens now? Now, Prime Counselor, you have a choice. You can accept the new territorial boundaries and focus your expansion efforts in other directions, or you can attempt to resist. If you choose resistance, we will continue to relocate your people to safety while we secure the territories we require. And if we choose to fight? Reaper's expression grew cold. Then you will lose, Prime Counselor. The question is whether you lose with your people safely relocated or scattered across the galaxy in escape pods. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Finally, Counselor Prime Vorthak spoke. Admiral, what is your assessment of our military options? Korath's voice was hollow. Based on what we've seen, Prime Counselor, I don't believe we have any. If this individual is representative of human military capability, then we are facing a civilization that has surpassed us in every meaningful category. Recommendations? We need to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about humanity, and we need to decide whether we're willing to risk the survival of the Confederation on the assumption that he's bluffing about their capabilities. As the counselors began debating their response, none of them noticed the small device that had materialized in the chamber's central computing core. It was no larger than a grain of sand, but it contained processing power that exceeded anything in the Confederation's technology base. Reaper had wanted them to make an informed decision. Now he would know exactly what that decision was the moment they made it, and he was prepared for either outcome. The decision came exactly 72 hours after Reaper's transmission ended. Admiral Koreth stood in the Confederation's primary war room, surrounded by tactical displays showing the deployment of the largest military force in galactic history. 7 full battle fleets, comprising over 15,000 vessels, had been assembled for what the Council was calling Operation Reclamation. "Fleet Admiral Zorthak reports all forces in position," announced his aide. "They're requesting permission to begin the advance." Koreth nodded grimly. The Council had chosen to fight. Despite all evidence to the contrary, despite every warning, they had convinced themselves that humanity was bluffing. That no single species could possibly have developed the capabilities Reaper claimed to possess. They were about to find out how wrong they were. "Signal all fleets, begin advance. Target the outer perimeter of the human expansion zone." The massive Confederation armada began moving through hyperspace toward what they expected to be a series of lightly defended human outposts. Intelligence suggested that humanity's expansion was being supported by converted civilian vessels and hastily constructed defensive platforms, the kind of infrastructure that could be swept aside by overwhelming force. They were still thinking in terms of conventional warfare. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Kane sat in the command center of what appeared to be a modest space station orbiting an unremarkable star in the contested zone. Around him, holographic displays showed the approaching Confederation fleet with perfect clarity, despite being separated by thousands of light years and multiple layers of sophisticated stealth technology. "ETA on Confederation forces?" Kane asked calmly. 18 hours until they reach the outer markers," replied the station's AI. The voice was completely human, indistinguishable from a person except for its perfect enunciation. "All evacuation protocols have been completed. No civilian personnel remain in the projected combat zone." Kane nodded. Unlike the Confederation's approach to warfare, humanity had spent considerable effort ensuring that this confrontation would take place in empty space, far from any inhabited worlds or civilian installations. Status on Reaper? Reaper is currently infiltrating the Confederation's primary command vessel. He reports that Admiral Koreth is personally overseeing the operation from the flagship Divine Retribution. Kane allowed himself a slight smile. Reaper was already inside their most heavily defended ship, and they had no idea he was there. By now, he would have access to their entire command structure, their battle plans, their communication networks, and their weapon systems. The Confederation was about to learn that in modern warfare, the most dangerous enemy wasn't the one you could see coming. "Signal all units. Proceed to Phase 1 positions." Across the galaxy, things that had been invisible began to move. Ships that had been hiding in the shadows between stars powered up their drives. Stations that had appeared to be asteroids or derelict hulks activated their true capabilities. Defensive platforms that existed in dimensions the Confederation couldn't detect aligned their weapons. Humanity's response to the Confederation's massive military buildup wasn't to match it ship for ship or fleet for fleet. Instead, they had spent decades building something entirely different, a military force designed around the principle that any enemy you fought fairly was an enemy you had failed to understand. Fleet Admiral Zorthak commanded the largest military force in Confederation history from the bridge of the Divine Retribution. The massive dreadnought was the crown jewel of the Confederation Navy, armed with enough firepower to level continents and protected by shields that could withstand the explosion of a small star. Around him, his tactical officers coordinated the movements of 15,000 ships, each one a testament to the Confederation's technological superiority. This was the force that had conquered half the galaxy. This was the armada that had brought hundreds of species to heel. "Sir, we're detecting some unusual readings from the target zone," reported his sensor officer. "Define unusual." Gravitational anomalies, sir, and some kind of quantum flux that's interfering with our long-range sensors. Zorthak frowned. Natural phenomena? Unknown, sir, but the patterns are structured, almost artificial. Before Zorthak could respond, every tactical display in the command center went dark for a moment. When they came back online, there was a new contact at the center of the main screen. A single human vessel, sleek and black, sitting motionless in space directly in the path of their advance. "How did that ship get there?" Zorthak demanded. "Unknown, sir. It wasn't there 30 seconds ago." The communication system activated without anyone touching the controls, and a familiar voice filled the command center. "Fleet Admiral Zorthak, this is Reaper. I'm broadcasting from your own ship, using your own communication array. I thought you should know." Pandemonium erupted on the bridge. Security teams were dispatched immediately, but Zorthak knew they wouldn't find anything. Somehow, this individual had infiltrated the most secure vessel in the Confederation Navy and was apparently accessing their systems at will. "I'm here to offer you one final opportunity to reconsider your current course of action," Reaper continued. "You are leading 15,000 ships and their crews into a situation they are not prepared for. Turn back now, and everyone goes home safely." "Never," Zorthak snarled. "You're one ship against 15,000. Even with whatever technology you possess, you cannot prevail against those odds." "Admiral, you're making the same mistake everyone else has made. You're still thinking in terms of ships and fleets and conventional tactics. Let me show you what you're actually facing." The tactical displays changed, showing a view of local space that made Zorthak's blood run cold. What had appeared to be empty void was revealed to be filled with geometric structures that defied easy description. They weren't ships in any conventional sense, but rather networks of interconnected platforms that existed partially outside normal space-time. "These are human defensive constructs," Reaper explained calmly. "Each one is approximately the size of your largest dreadnought, but they exist in 11 dimensions rather than the 3 you're familiar with. You cannot target them with conventional weapons because most of their mass exists in spaces your sensors cannot detect." "Impossible," Zorthak whispered. "Admiral, you keep using that word, but you're about to discover that humanity's definition of impossible is significantly broader than yours." The constructs began to move, shifting through space in ways that violated every law of physics the Confederation understood. They seemed to phase in and out of existence, appearing at different locations without crossing the intervening space. "You see, Admiral, while your civilization was conquering primitive species and congratulating yourselves on your superiority, we were solving problems. Real problems. How do you defend against an enemy with superior numbers? How do you project force across galactic distances? How do you end a war so decisively that it never happens again?" More contacts appeared on the screens. Not ships, but something far stranger. Geometric patterns that seemed to exist more in the realm of mathematics than physics, yet somehow interacted with matter and energy in ways that defied classification. "Admiral, I want you to understand something important," Reaper's voice continued. "Everything you've seen so far, every demonstration of human capability, has been us holding back. We've been trying to resolve this situation with minimal force, minimal casualties, minimal disruption to the galactic status quo. But you've chosen to escalate this to a military confrontation." The human vessel at the center of their formation began to change. What had appeared to be a simple starship unfolded like an origami sculpture, revealing internal structures that were clearly far larger than the external dimensions should have allowed. It continued expanding until it dominated the tactical display, a construction that dwarfed even the divine retribution. "So let me show you what human military doctrine actually looks like when we stop holding back." Space around the Confederation fleet began to change. Stars shifted position. The familiar constellations rearranged themselves. It wasn't that the ships were moving through space. Space itself was being manipulated around them. What you're experiencing is a localized alteration of space-time geometry, Reaper explained, his tone remaining conversationally calm. We've isolated your fleet in a pocket dimension where the normal rules don't apply. You could fire every weapon you possess for the next 1,000 years and not affect anything outside this bubble. Zorthak watched his tactical displays with growing horror. His ships were reporting that their navigation systems had failed, their weapon-targeting computers were displaying impossible readings, and their communication arrays could no longer reach Confederation space. "This is impossible," he repeated, the phrase becoming a mantra. "Admiral, let me explain something about humanity that your intelligence services missed. We don't just adapt to new situations. We rewrite the fundamental rules that create those situations. When we encountered faster-than-light travel, we didn't just build ships that could exceed light speed. We developed technology that makes the speed of light irrelevant. When we studied the galactic balance of power, we didn't try to match existing military capabilities. We made existing military capabilities obsolete. Around the Confederation fleet, the geometric constructs began to move into new configurations. As they did, reality itself seemed to bend around them, creating visual effects that hurt to look at directly. Admiral, I'm going to offer you a choice. You can order your fleet to surrender, and we'll return you safely to Confederation space with a complete record of this engagement for your superiors. Or you can attempt to fight, and I'll demonstrate why every single ship in your fleet is already completely helpless." Zorthak looked around his command center, seeing the fear in his officers' eyes. These were veterans of dozens of campaigns, beings who had faced death in battle without flinching. But what they were witnessing now was beyond their comprehension, beyond their training, beyond their courage. "What happens if we surrender?" he asked. "You go home. You deliver a message to the Confederation Council, and you recommend that they accept humanity's territorial requirements without further military action. And if we fight, then I will systematically disable every vessel in your fleet without causing casualties, and you'll go home anyway. But the demonstration will be considerably more traumatic for your crews." Zorthak closed his eyes, weighing options that weren't really options. Finally, he opened a channel to all ships. "All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Zorthak. Stand down all weapons. Prepare for diplomatic resolution." "A wise choice, Admiral," Reaper's voice replied. "Now, let me show you something important." The pocket dimension around them began to shift again, and suddenly the Confederation fleet was surrounded by human vessels. Not the single ship they had seen before, but thousands of them. Sleek, black constructions that moved through space with the same impossible physics they had witnessed from the defensive platforms. "This is humanity's first fleet, Admiral. One of 7 such formations currently in service. Each ship in this fleet is capable of what you just witnessed. Each one could disable your entire armada without sustaining damage." The implications hit Zorthak like a physical blow. If this was just one of 7 fleets, then humanity possessed military capability that exceeded the Confederation's by orders of magnitude. "But Admiral, that's not the message I want you to take back to your council." "What is the message?" "The message is that everything you've seen here, everything you've experienced, is still us holding back. This fleet, these capabilities, these demonstrations of power, this is what we consider appropriate for dealing with a civilization that might become a threat someday. This is not what we would deploy against a civilization we actually considered dangerous." Reaper's vessel moved closer to the divine retribution, and Zorthak could see that the human was standing on what appeared to be an external observation deck, completely unprotected in the vacuum of space. "Admiral, I want you to understand that humanity's approach to warfare is fundamentally different from anything your civilization has encountered. We don't seek to conquer. We don't seek to subjugate. We seek to ensure that conflicts end so decisively that they never occur again. What are you saying? I'm saying that if the Confederation chooses to continue this conflict, our next response will not be a demonstration. It will be a conclusion. And I can guarantee that when humanity concludes a military engagement, the outcome is permanent. The pocket dimension dissolved around them, returning the Confederation fleet to normal space. But now they could see the full scope of what surrounded them. Human constructs stretched in every direction, covering volumes of space that dwarfed entire star systems. Admiral, you have 48 hours to return to Confederation space and deliver our message to the Council. After that, we will assume that the Confederation has chosen total warfare, and we will respond accordingly. The human vessels began to fade from view, not moving away, but simply becoming invisible to Confederation sensors. Within minutes, the only evidence of their presence was the complete tactical data that had been uploaded to every ship in the fleet. Zorthak stood alone on his bridge, staring at readings that showed him exactly how comprehensively outmatched they had been. Every weapon system on every ship had been locked out during the encounter. Every defensive system had been penetrated. Every communication array had been compromised. They had been completely at Reaper's mercy, and he had chosen to show them that mercy. "Helm," Zorthak said quietly. "Set course for Confederation space. Maximum speed." As the fleet began its long journey home, Zorthak knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The age of Confederation expansion was over. Humanity had arrived, and they were rewriting the rules. The only question now was whether the Confederation would be wise enough to accept the new reality or foolish enough to discover what happened to civilizations that refused to learn. 3 days later, the Confederation Council received Fleet Admiral Zorthak's complete report. After reviewing the tactical data, the testimony of 15,000 military personnel, and the implications of humanity's demonstrated capabilities, they voted unanimously to accept the new territorial boundaries. The age of human expansion had begun, and across the galaxy, other civilizations began to wonder if perhaps it was time to reconsider their own assumptions about what was possible in a universe where humanity no longer needed to hide what they were capable of achieving. The name Reaper became something more than a designation for a single individual. It became a reminder that in the vast cosmos, there was always someone more dangerous than you could imagine, and sometimes, if you were very lucky, that someone was on your side.